One book, one extraordinary life. 48 chapters of saints, science, and the search for God.
I'm Kai,
And I'm Maya.
and this is our take on Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter by chapter. A man sits in lotus posture on the top floor of a house on Upper Circular Road. He hasn't left that house in 20 years. His body shows no signs of age, no stiffness, no weakness. Stalwart and straight in his 70s, he looks like something out of an ancient text. And when his disciple performs a breathing exercise in front of visitors, it sounds like an actual storm has broken out inside the room.
Chapter 7, The Levitating Saint. And this chapter introduces us to Baduri Mahasaya, one of the most quietly remarkable figures in the entire book. No dramatic entrance, no tiger fights, no perfume from thin air. Just a man sitting upstairs in perfect stillness, radiating something that draws people to him from across the city and eventually from across the ocean.
So here's how the chapter opens. Mukunda's friend Upendra Mohan Chowdhury comes to him one day and says, "I saw a yogi remain in the air several feet above the ground last night at a group meeting." And Mukunda gives him an enthusiastic smile and immediately guesses the name. Perhaps I can guess. Was it Baduri Mahasaya of Upper Circular Road? And Upendra nods, a little crestfallen not to be the newsbearer. Mukunda's inquisitiveness about saints was well known among his friends. They delighted in setting him on a fresh track.
And Mukunda already knows this man personally. The yogi lives so close to my home that I often visit him. And he shares his own observations. He's seen Baduri in remarkable feats. Baduri has expertly mastered the various pranayamas of the ancient eightfold yoga outlined by Patanjali. And then he describes this specific moment that I find so vivid.
Once, Baduri performed the Pastrika pranayama before Mukunda with such amazing force that it seemed an actual storm had arisen in the room. And then he extinguished the thundering breath and remained motionless in a high state of superconsciousness. The aura of peace after the storm was vivid beyond forgetting. That's quite an image, right? A hurricane of breath and then absolute stillness. And the stillness is what stays with you, not the spectacle, the silence after.
And then Upendra asks a practical question. How does he remain in the air, defying the law of gravitation? And Mukunda explains that a yogi's body loses its grossness after use of certain pranayamas. Then it will levitate or hop about like a leaping frog. Even saints who do not practice a formal yoga have been known to levitate during a state of intense devotion to God. So it's not exclusive to one method. It can happen through technique or through sheer love.
And here's the detail that really caught my attention. Upendra mentions, almost as an aside, "I heard that the saint never leaves his home," and Mukunda confirms it. Baduri has lived indoors for the past 20 years. He slightly relaxes his self-imposed rule only at the times of holy festivals, when he goes as far as his front sidewalk, and the beggars gather there because Baduri is known for his tender heart. 20 years in one building, Maya, and the only reason he steps outside is to be near the people who need him most. And it's worth noting what Yogananda says next. Saint Teresa of Avila, for instance, was observed in levitation by other Christian saints. It's not an Indian phenomenon, it's a human phenomenon.
And getting in to see Baduri isn't easy. Mukunda describes visiting one afternoon after school. The yogi was inaccessible to the general public. A lone disciple occupying the ground floor guarded his master's privacy. The student was something of a martinet. He formally inquires whether Mukunda has an engagement. And Baduri's voice comes from upstairs just in time to save Mukunda from summary ejection. Let Mukunda come when he will. The sage's eyes twinkled. And then he adds something that really stayed with me. My rule of seclusion is not for my own comfort, but for that of others. Worldly people do not like the candor which shatters their delusions. Saints are not only rare, but disconcerting. Even in scripture, they are often found embarrassing.
I love that. Saints are embarrassing because they tell the truth, and truth makes people uncomfortable. Baduri is protecting other people from himself, not the other way around. His seclusion is an act of compassion toward a world that can't handle what he'd say to them. That completely reframes what it means to be a hermit, you know? It's not withdrawal from the world, it's mercy toward it.
Mukunda follows him upstairs to his austere quarters on the top floor, from which he seldom stirs. And Yogananda makes this observation about masters in general. Masters often ignore the panorama of the world's ado, out of focus till centered in the ages. The contemporaries of a sage are not only those of the narrow present. Baduri isn't just sitting in his room. He's living in a different time frame entirely.
And the physical description of Baduri is remarkable. The sage locked his vibrant body in the lotus posture. In his 70s, he displayed no unpleasing signs of age or sedentary life. Stalwart and straight, he was ideal in every respect. His face was that of a rishi, as described in the ancient texts. Noble-headed, abundantly bearded, he always sat firmly upright, his quiet eyes fixed on omnipresence. And that word, omnipresence, with a capital O. Badiri's eyes aren't fixed on a wall or on the ceiling or on nothing. They're fixed on everything, on the totality.
And they sit together in meditation for about an hour. And when Badiri gently rouses him, he asks a question that cuts right to the heart of everything. You go often into the silence, but have you developed anubhava? Anubhava means actual perception of God, direct experience. Not technique, not skill at meditating. Have you actually touched the divine? And then he says it plainly, do not mistake the technique for the goal. He was reminding Mukunda to love God more than meditation.
Hold on, I want to sit with that for a second. Do not mistake the technique for the goal. That's one of the most important lines in the entire book, because it's so easy to get caught up in practice, in method, in doing it right, in counting your breaths, logging your meditation hours, perfecting your posture. And Badiri is saying all of that is just the vehicle. The destination is love. You can be the most technically proficient meditator in the world and still miss the point entirely if your heart isn't in it.
And I think that distinction, technique versus goal, runs through every spiritual tradition. You find it in the Christian mystics, where contemplative prayer is valued not for the practice itself, but for the union with God it produces. You find it in Sufism, where the whirling is not the point, the ecstasy of divine communion is. Badiri is expressing a universal principle, and he's doing it in 6 words. Do not mistake the technique for the goal. If you only remember one line from this chapter, make it that one. And then, with that good-humored wet that Yogananda found so delightful in his grave nature, Badiri offers him some mangoes, and he remarks, people in general are more fond of jala yoga, union with food, than of dhyana yoga, union with God. A yogic pun. And Mukunda says the pun affected him uproariously. What a laugh you have, Badiri responds, and an affectionate gleam comes into his gaze. His own face was always serious, yet touched with an ecstatic smile. His large lotus eyes held a hidden divine laughter.
And I think that detail, the hidden divine laughter, tells you everything about this man. He's profoundly serious about God and profoundly amused by the world. Those aren't contradictions in him. They're the same thing. When you can see the cosmic joke clearly enough, seriousness and humor become inseparable.
And then Badiri shows Mukunda something unexpected. He indicates several thick envelopes on a table. Those letters come from far-off America, the sage says. He corresponds with a few societies there whose members are interested in yoga. They are discovering India anew, with a better sense of direction than Columbus. I am glad to help them. The knowledge of yoga is free to all who will receive, like the ungarnishable daylight.
And then comes a statement that I think is prophetic given what Yogananda eventually does with his life. Badiri says, what rishis perceived as essential for human salvation need not be diluted for the West. Alike in soul, though diverse in outer experience, neither West nor East will flourish if some form of disciplinary yoga be not practiced. That's a radical claim. He's not saying yoga is nice for Westerners who are interested. He's saying both civilizations need it. The East isn't complete without the inner science of the West, and the West isn't complete with, well, he doesn't say that part, but the implication is mutual.
And Yogananda writes that Badiri held him with his tranquil eyes after saying this. And he didn't realize at the time that Badiri's speech was a veiled prophetic guidance. It's only later, writing the book, that he understands the casual intimations Badiri often gave him, that someday he would carry India's teachings to America. Badiri could see the future sitting right in front of him, and he was planting seeds in Mukunda's mind without making a big production of it.
And when Mukunda asks why Badiri doesn't write a book on yoga for the benefit of the world, Badiri gives an answer that floors me every time. I am training disciples. They and their students will be living volumes, proof against the natural disintegrations of time and the unnatural interpretations of the critics.
Living volumes. Think about that phrase for a second. Not paper and ink, people. Embodied truth that can't be misquoted, can't be taken out of context, can't be reduced to words on a page. The teaching lives in the teacher and passes to the student and lives again. That's the guru-disciple transmission in its purest form. And Badiri's wit puts Mukunda into another gale of laughter.
And then the evening comes. Badiri's disciples arrive and he enters one of his inimitable discourses. Yogananda describes it beautifully. Like a peaceful flood, he swept away the mental debris of his listeners, floating them Godward. His striking parables were expressed in a flawless Bengali. And the topic that evening is the life of Mirabai, the medieval Rajputani princess who abandoned her court life to seek the company of sadhus.
And here's the thing about the Mirabai story. One great sannyasi refused to receive her because she was a woman, and her reply brought him humbly to her feet. Tell the master that I did not know there was any male in the universe save God. Are we all not females before him? She reversed the entire framework in a single sentence. Before God, gender is irrelevant. Everyone is the beloved. Everyone is feminine in relation to the divine.
And Bhaduri shares one of Mirabai's ecstatic songs, which are still treasured in India. And the poem is devastating in its simplicity. If by bathing daily God could be realized, sooner would I be a whale in the deep. If by eating roots and fruits he could be known, gladly would I choose the form of a goat. She goes through ritual after ritual, external practice after external practice, and shows each one to be absurd if taken as the path itself. And the poem ends with the perfect line. Mirabai knows that to find the divine one, the only indispensable is love.
Not technique, not pranayama, not 20 years of seclusion. Love, that's the indispensable thing. And it circles right back to Bhaduri's question about anubhava. Have you experienced God directly? Because that experience comes through love, not through perfecting your practice. Mirabai and Bhaduri are saying the same thing from completely different lives.
And then a student praises Bhaduri for renouncing riches and comforts to seek God. Several students had put rupees in Bhaduri's slippers, the customary offering in India, placing one's material goods at the guru's feet. And Bhaduri's correction is immediate. You are reversing the case. I have left a few paltry rupees, a few petty pleasures, for a cosmic empire of endless bliss. How then have I denied myself anything? Is that a sacrifice? The short-sighted worldly folk are verily the real renunciates. They relinquish an unparalleled divine possession for a poor handful of earthly toys.
I keep coming back to that phrase, a cosmic empire of endless bliss. That's not metaphor for Bhaduri. That's his daily experience. He's describing his actual life. And from that vantage point, a few rupees and some social pleasures really do look like a handful of earthly toys.
And Yogananda chuckles over this paradoxical view of renunciation, one which puts the cap of Croesus on any saintly beggar, whilst transforming all proud millionaires into unconscious martyrs. It's a complete inversion. The worldly person is the one making the sacrifice. The saint got the better deal by every measure. And Bhaduri's concluding words that evening are the realized creed of his faith. The divine order arranges our future more wisely than any insurance company. The world is full of uneasy believers in an outward security. Their bitter thoughts are like scars on their foreheads. The one who gave us air and milk from our first breath knows how to provide day by day for his devotees. And I want to linger on that image for a moment. The divine order arranges our future more wisely than any insurance company. Bhaduri has no pension, no savings, no health plan. He's been sitting in a room for 20 years with nothing but his practice and his disciples. And he's telling an audience of people who probably worry about money every day that the universe itself is the ultimate safety net. That's either the most delusional thing you've ever heard or the most liberating. And based on the evidence of his actual life, his health, his joy, his impact, I think the evidence favors liberation.
And Mukunda continued his after-school pilgrimages to Bhaduri's store. With silent zeal, the saint aided him to attain anubhava, actual perception of God. One day, Bhaduri moved to Ram Mohan Roy Road, away from the neighborhood. His loving disciples had built him a new hermitage, known as Nagendramath. But Mukunda kept visiting. The connection was too deep to be broken by distance.
And years later, shortly before Yogananda embarked for the West, he sought Bhaduri out and humbly knelt for his farewell blessing. And the saint's final words to him are among the most beautiful in the book. Son, go to America. Take the dignity of hoary India for your shield. Victory is written on your brow. The noble, distant people will well receive you.
Son, go to America. Take the dignity of hoary India for your shield. Victory is written on your brow. The noble, distant people will well receive you. Not good luck or be careful. Victory is written, already, as if it's already happened, and Bhaduri is simply reading the future off Mukunda's forehead. And everything that followed proved him right.
And I think what Mukunda received from Bhaduri wasn't technique. It wasn't pranayama instruction. It was the demonstration that a life lived entirely for God could be joyful, humorous, generous, and deeply practical all at once. Bhaduri never seemed grim about his 20 years of seclusion. He seemed delighted by it. He had the cosmic empire. Everyone else was making the sacrifice.
And here's what I find so moving about that scene. Bhaduri spent decades in one room, living quietly, never seeking fame or recognition. And his farewell blessing to Mukunda isn't cautious or hedging. It's absolute. He sees victory already written. The confidence of that pronouncement comes from direct perception, from anubhava, the same quality he challenged Mukunda to develop. You know what's interesting about this chapter's placement? After the Tiger Swami, who was all spectacle and physical power and dramatic transformation through suffering, we get Bhaduri, who does almost nothing outwardly. He sits in a room, he meditates, he talks to visitors. He levitates, yes, but almost as an afterthought. The real power in this chapter is in the conversation, in the questions he asks, in the seeds he plants.
And both chapters are showing Mukunda different faces of spiritual attainment. The Tiger Swami found God through the body, through suffering and physical extremity. Bhaduri found God through stillness, through sitting and breathing and loving. The paths couldn't be more different, but both men arrived at the same place. That's one of the book's core teachings, right? All genuine paths lead to the same truth.
Next time, we step out of the world of yogis and saints entirely. Mukunda visits a scientist, Jagadish Chandra Bose, who invented wireless technology before Marconi, turned his genius to the study of plants, and proved that even metal responds to pain, fatigue, and poison. Science and the ancient teachings are about to meet in a laboratory.
And what Bose discovers doesn't just challenge Western science. It confirms what the yogis have been saying for millennia, that consciousness runs all the way down. See you next time.